Hello, this is Dread, and in today's video topic, this is going to be another build coming from the proverbial think tank that is my mind, and that is Wings of Discord, Frostbite, Volcanic Orb, Spellblade. So the concept of this build is abusing Wings of Discord to achieve some unique effects, specifically getting some Volcanic Orbs that stand still. Now, normally, this would be very easy, as you could just simply put on one idol and then the other idol of reduced speed. The problem with this, though, is you are missing scaling from one of the strongest items in the entire game, and that is Throne of Ambition. Throne of Ambition gives you a very large amount of more damage for builds that are cold or fire, and all skills and all things are balanced around this dichotomy for fire and cold. Simply put, if you're not using Throne of Ambition in your cold or your fire build, you are not only losing 40% more armor, you're also losing 40% more damage. It is very tough to play a build without this, as it is just a gigantic boost in survivability and damage. So the problem with Volcanic Orb is to get the desired effect of having Volcanic Orb stand still so that it can overlap on bosses, you must run two idols, because you need 100% reduced speed, because one of the nodes inside Volcanic Orb's tree gives you 100% more orb damage, but it increases the speed per second of your Volcanic Orb. So it's either you don't run those nodes and then run like one reduced speed idol, or like pretty much to grab every single thing in Volcanic Orb while also grabbing, of course, Throne of Ambition is impossible. It's just impossible until this patch. And that's through Wings of Discord. Wings of Discord it makes it so that your unique idols, unique shape idols, by the way, like not unique as in like Throne of Ambition unique, but unique in its shape. Each one that's unique in shape from your other idols, right? All of your other idols, they get 100% increased effect. And this is a very specific distinction because it allows us to run a Volcanic Orb reduced speed idol while also running Throne of Ambition, because our Volcanic Orb speed idol gets doubled. So it goes to a more than negative 100% movement speed. So it just sits there and does its damage, which is great. That's what we want. And it does this with only one idol so that we can shove a Throne of Ambition, because Wings of Discord does not count unique idols. So you can put a Throne of Ambition in there, and then you get every single desired effect that you want for Volcanic Orb without having to sacrifice damage. And how we're getting this damage is through Explosive Ground on Volcanic Orb. Essentially, it makes the Volcanic Orb shoot out a bunch of those little circles that do damage in an area, and then it also scales on more damage with orb damage. So we have a large amount of modifiers in the tree that we can now grab because our orb is stationary. Because if you simply take Wings of Discord off, your orb will just go flying off into the stratosphere, which is not what we want. We want the orb to stand still so that we can do damage. It simply puts a Volcanic Orb, turns it into like a little like turret instead of making it go off in the distance. And that makes it really good for killing stuff. And right now we're sitting at, I think, 30 to 40 million Frostbite DPS. Might be more, might be less. It's hard to tell. I believe on bigger targets like Aberoth, it's more. It's just hard to tell sometimes because, you know, numbers are so fluent in last epoch. Like, I don't know, whatever. But we're getting a large amount of Frostbites because we're just simply playing a Frostbite build that's abusing Armor Shred chance and getting as much Armor Shred, which is converting it to Frostbite. And all of that combined leads to a lot of Frostbites per second and a lot of damage. Unfortunately, we were forced to choose a Spellblade. Through every other option that I tried a Sorc version of this, and then I tried a Rune Master version of this, and the only version that I enjoyed that wasn't mana stacking and needed to run focus was this build. I did not want to run focus on my build because let me tell you, I've played enough builds with focus. This is the only version I could find that does not run focus. Now, the concept here is we're skill queuing with Mana Strike and Volcanic Orb to maintain our mana. So we're simply using both buttons at the same time. We're a melee build anyways because we drop that Volcanic Orb on bosses, because it drops where our, feet is instead of drops where our cursor is, meaning that we have to be right on top of the enemy to drop our Volcanic Orbs. And since we're already doing that, we might as well get mana back with Mana Strike, because the problem with Explosive Orb is it makes a Volcanic Orb costs a lot of mana. And to spew out as many Volcanic Orbs as possible while also maintaining that mana, we need to run something like Mana Strike to sustain that. And then on top of this, one of the best ways of scaling our DPS even further is to dual wield, and specifically to dual wield both Run's Penance, because Run's Penance is a low LP base that gives you like 30% pen, which is a lot of pen, by the way, and then that on top of all of the leech it gives us so that we leech back our HP very quickly. 8% of damage leech's life is really strong with the damage over time source, and that on top of having very low LP, and we can put Armor Shred on both swords, and that's what makes Spellblade good versus the other classes in terms of damage. Now, you could do other classes, you could do less damage and be tankier, but I decided to go with the Spellblade version because not only that, there's not enough Spellblade builds out there, so that's another reason, right? I want more Spellblade builds to be out there, so that's why we're playing Spellblade today. But yeah, let's, before we talk about the build in detail and how things work in detail, I just want to let you know, I did try to do Uber Aberoth a few times with this character, and it's okay. Like, I wasn't able to do it personally, and that's just because this specific setup that I currently have cannot tank the flail slams. So when he does like the little flail auto attack thing, it does a very large amount of damage compared to the amount of HP and ward that I have, and we can fix it, but we got to fix it through gearing. Right now, I don't have that good of gearing because I'm playing Circle of Fortune, and you know, I'm not going to be able to get the gearing that I'd want for the character to the point where I could do Uber in a time frame that you know, makes sense for humanity, instead of, you know, till the end of the earth, you know, like farming at end of the earth until, you know, I get the items I want. So, you know, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to port this as like, you know, oh, we kill Uber. No, it has really high damage, but it has lower survivability due to the fact it's a Spellblade. Also note, it has very poor damage over time defenses, and that is because we don't really have room for the mod that gives us armor to damage over time. We don't have an easy way of getting it unless if we sacrifice something like our helmet for like a decayed skull. So like, there are ways of doing it. It's just really fucking annoying. But yeah, let's go into detail, shall we? So like I said in the intro, Wings of Discord, it makes it so that all of our idols are doubled in effect as long as we are running a bunch of different idol slots. And the reason why it works so well with Frostbite is Frostbite has a large amount of different kinds of uniques for mage. So we have a 1x3 that has Frostbite and cold damage over time, and then an enchantment for percent increased damage. Then we have like the 1x3, which is percent damage, cold penetration with Frostbite, and eventually percent armor. And then we also have the, you know, ornate idol, which has like Volcanic Orb damage and cold damage over time, and then also as well percent damage and movement speed, which then gets doubled by Wings of Discord. Remember the enchants also as well. And then the 2x2 eventually could have like HP and frostbite chance on it, but I decided to go with a bunch of like small idols to fill out my resistances, because you can actually end up with a lot of resistances, because you can use like a 2x1, a humble idol, a humble weaver idol, and get like 40% fizz res from one idol, which is really strong. So Wings of Discord gives us a very large amount of affixes. So to give you an idea, Wings of Discord not only reads all of its effects, it reads penetration with frostbite, a bunch of percent damage, movement speed, duration, and then also as well resistances up the wazoo and percent health up the wazoo. So Wings of the Discord is very sneaky in what it's doing, but it is giving us a very large amount of damage and survivability just by existing. Eventually you could get a 2LP one, but getting 2LP items from the primordial vendor is a pain in the ass, as I learned as I burnt a very large amount of ancient bones trying to go for a 2LP Wings of Discord, which I never ended up getting, right? Now, a lot of our scaling is coming from Freezing Point from the Rune Master tree. We get a lot of armor shred from our gloves, our weapons, and our amulet, which can then get converted into frostbite chance. And we are specifically going Spellblade so that we can dual wield one-handed swords. So we can dual wield Run's Penances, which both can have T7 armor shred, which is 340% chance to apply frostbite for us, and then a bunch of percent damage as well. Because remember, they're very low LP bases, and in COF, they were not that long to farm. Like it took me an evening at most to farm both of them. And then of course utilizing the Circle of Fortune with like woven echoes with like unclaimed troves and imprinting a multi exalted one-handed sword. And then I ended up getting my swords very quickly. And of course, Frostbite Shackles is just a really good pair of gloves with Armor Shred on the suffix. And then eventually you can get Armor Shred in the amulet. I wasn't able to afford that because I needed more HP to be tankier, but eventually you can get Armor Shred on the amulet as well. Another part of scaling for our build is Snowdrift. Snowdrift gives us a lot of cold penetration with Frostbite per 10% freeze rate multi. As you can see on our gear though, a little bit, we actually have cold pen everywhere. That's because even with all of the investment to Snowdrift, it's really efficient to keep stacking cold pen on top of the cold pen that we get from Snowdrift. So we get like, I think about 150% cold pen from Snowdrift. And then on top of that, we can get cold pen on the amulet, on the helmet, and we get cold pen on the chest, and we get cold pen on idols. And just think of it as another like percentage damage source on top of our percent damage, on top of all of our ailment chance. Because there's not that many sources of frostbite duration, so we don't really have many ways of scaling it that way. But we can scale freeze rate multi to the moon. And also, as well, freeze rate is actually really good for us because Volcanic Orb hits a lot. And each of those little explosions have decent freeze rate, which can freeze enemies very easily. And it makes trash really hard to kill us because, we're putting a bunch of volcanic orbs, which not only kill enemies, but also freeze them very easily. Yeah, that's like the main way we're stacking damage here. For those who are unaware of how skill queuing works, I'm going to give a quick tutorial. Pretty much TLDR, if you have a skill on the right and a skill on the left, if you're holding down the left skill and the right skill at the same time, the left skill is chosen as priority. So if I'm holding down skill B and skill A is always going to go off if it has mana and cooldown, right? Every single time, even if I'm holding down skill B, no matter what I do, as long as there's enough mana and there's enough cooldown, or if it's off cooldown. Now, if skill Q cannot be cast for whatever reason, whether that be on cooldown, like Volcanic Orb, or out of mana, like also Volcanic Orb, skill B will then start being used. It simply makes it so that instead of having to make two separate thoughts of holding down Q, out of mana, use Mana Strike, it puts it into this one button kind of ish territory where you don't have to think about it. You just simply do it, and you don't have to think about making separate actions. It's going to just do it for you, and the animations are quick enough as long as you have enough attack and cast speed, right? Which is really easy to do now that we have like this attack and cast speed from dual wielding. Pretty much that allows us to do that, right? Now, this is very important for this build because it makes it go from meh to feeling really good because, like I said, we just sit on a boss, we hold down the buttons, and then we can spend all of our precious, thought process on either scrolling through TikTok or, maybe even dodging boss abilities. All right, and that's going to be it for the video today. If you haven't already, I would heavily suggest leaving a like on the video and subscribing to the channel, as that is the best way of currently supporting me. And also as well, I'm live on Twitch and on YouTube occasionally whenever I have the time to do so, where I'm just making more content like this live. Now, bye guys.